Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Luke Monster. Today we're going to be ranking every single Black Series Clone Trooper from worst to first. Now this is my personal list, but it doesn't mean you all have to agree with it, so if you guys do have a different list, make sure to comment down below what you guys would change. And of course, there are some brand new Black Series clones that have been announced, but not yet released, and so since they're not released yet, I can't put them on the list. Some good examples of this are like the brand new Commander Bakara, or the new Commander Gree. But yeah, other than that, let's go ahead and just jump right into the video. Really quick though, we are actually giving away this Black Series Clone 2-pack at 15k subscribers, and we're getting really close to that number. So if you do want a chance to win, all you have to do is 1, make sure you're subbed to the channel, because you do have to be subbed to enter, and 2, once we actually hit 15k subs, I'll release a giveaway video, and all you have to do is comment on that giveaway video to enter. Anyway, on to the video. Coming in at the number 60 spot, I give it to the original Holiday Clone Trooper. For starters, this figure is on the original 2013 clone body, and so the articulation is very poor. I'm also personally not the biggest fan of the Holiday figures. I know a lot of people do like them, and so if that's you, they'll probably be a whole lot higher up on your list, but for me personally, it's towards the bottom just because I'm not a big fan of the Holiday decos. Coming in at the number 59 spot, I gave it to the Clone Lieutenant. Again, to start, this figure is on the 2013 clone body, so very poor articulation, but it's also just the wrong shade of blue. This is what the figure's supposed to look like, and as you can tell, it's very different. We've even got this figure in TVC, and it's been the correct color blue, but for some reason Black Series just couldn't get it right. Another big complaint I have with it is that the paint job on this guy is like chipped. It has like paint chips in it, while all the other Phase 1 ranked clone troopers just have clean, plain paint, and so it's just weird that this one has paint chipping and the others don't. At the number 58 spot, we do have the original Phase 1 clone trooper, again, on that original clone body, so the articulation is horrible. And as far as the design goes, I think I just prefer the Phase 2 helmet over the Phase 1 helmet, but in recent years, the Phase 1 has been growing on me, so maybe in next year's list this will change. Next up is the Clone Sergeant. This one is the correct color of green, so I do like that, but as far as the shade of green goes, I'm just not a big fan of the shade of green. This has nothing to do with Hasbro, but just Star Wars and how they chose their colors here, and because of that, I think out of the 4 ranked Phase 1 Clone Troopers, he's got the worst color combo. At the number 56 and 55 spot, we have the Clone Commander, as well as the original Phase 2 Clone Trooper. I think visually, both of these figures look great. I love the color they chose for the yellow of the Clone Commander, and I do think that the Phase 2 clone looks solid as well. It really just comes down to the limitations that the original 2013 clone body sets on these figures. It makes posing pretty much impossible, and the poses that you can get them into just don't look very good. Coming in at the number 54 spot is the last of the ranked Phase 1 clones, and that is the Clone Captain. I think by far he's got the best color scheme. I think that maroonish deep red color looks really good on this figure. Just really hope they do an updated version of all of these ranked clones on that 2023 clone body in the future, because it would be such a huge improvement that is much needed. Next up is ARC Trooper Fordo, and for the most part I think this figure looks really good. The problem is it's just not Fordo. Fordo does not have all the extra bits and pieces of ARC Trooper armor that all the Clone Wars arcs have. Fordo just doesn't have that, and Hasbro just reusing the ARC Trooper body for this because the figure is called an ARC Trooper just does not work. TVC released this figure and it looks amazing. He's got the correct pauldron and the correct comma, and he's even got the correct blasters, none of which the Black Series version has. The next 4 spots go to the Order 66 4-pack. All of these figures look really good. Even the 442nd, which is technically not a real clone battalion, looks amazing. I think the weathering on these figures are unmatched. It's just a lot of the paint apps like these that have a lot of the newer modern Black Series figures really lacking when it comes to good weathering and paint apps. But regardless, these all 4 are on the old 2013 clone body, so the articulation is not good. Coming in at the number 48 spot is the Elite Squad Trooper. I think the design of the Elite Squad Trooper is really cool. A dark gray clone trooper with a green visor is super dope, but the figure itself is completely missing the gray stripe that goes down the helmet and the shoulder pads. It's very subtle, but it is there on the design, and the Black Series figure just completely missed it. Coming in at the number 47 spot is Clone Commander Cody. I think this figure is really cool. I think the helmet, the backpack, and a lot of the unique molds that this one has is very good. I think the problem is he just lacks a lot of the weathering aspects that a lot of the clone troopers at the time coming out had. Cody just doesn't have any of that weathering, and it definitely shows comparing him to some of the other clone commanders in the line. Coming in at the number 46 spot is Clone Commander Fox, and I gotta say the weathering on this figure is really good. Again, the problem is just that he's on that 2013 clone body, so a lot of the articulation is very poor. You want to get him to some nice dual pistol holding poses, and you just can't do that with this figure. Coming in at the number 45 spot is Clone Commander Gree, and this figure is really good when it comes to the paint apps and the paint deco. I absolutely love the camo on this figure. It came out great. I also love the little extra bits that went into it. He's got a brand new torso piece as well as a new thigh piece when it comes to that little like strap ammo piece that's on there too. I think that came out amazing. Overall, I think the biggest problem is, again, it's on the crappy 2013 body with poor articulation. Now, we do have the non-camo version of Gree coming out later this year, so hopefully that one's okay, but it's not out yet at the time of recording this video. Coming in at the number 44 spot is Commander Wolf, and this is a figure I really want to like. I do absolutely love the Tamora Morrison head sculpt underneath with the missing eye and the scar. I think that looks incredible, as well as the brand new helmet for this guy as well. I think that mold is great, but everything else really kind of just sucks. I think that the paint apps and the weathering are very poor, and of course the articulation sucks on this one as well. Coming in at the number 43 spot, we have the Gingerbread Clone Trooper. I think this one is pretty solid. It is on the 2020 clone body, so much better articulation. Again, not a huge fan of the holiday-themed figures, but as far as this one goes, it's got much better articulation than the original one we already talked about. And then sticking on the holiday theme for the number 42 spot, we have the Skeleton Stormtrooper. This one is a really cool design. I do really like the idea of this, and I do think it's a lot better than the gingerbread version. The number 41 spot, we have the Clone Wars version of the 187th Battalion Trooper, and this is a design for the Trooper that I really like. I do think the paint design and color looks amazing. The biggest problem is the actual base body here. It's like this off-white color, almost like a yellowish white color, and it just does not match any of the other Clone Troopers we've got in the line before. And it pretty much just ruins this Clone Trooper for me because he doesn't match anything else I already have in the line. At the 40 spot is the other version of the 187th Clone Battalion that came out in the Clones of the Republic line. I think this version of the figure is much better. I do like the purple design a whole lot better, and of course it does have the actual, like, correct white color armor, and so it's just leaps and bounds better than the original version, but unfortunately it's just not canon to anything. At the 39th spot is the plain white 2020 Phase 1 Clone Trooper. This one is a solid look with a classic design, and it does have much better articulation than the 2013 version. At the 38th spot is Imperial Crosshair. This figure is solid overall, but unfortunately he does reuse a lot of the original Crosshair figure, which just makes him pretty inaccurate, which is a big bummer. At the 37th spot is ARC Trooper Jesse, and this figure would have made the top 10 if it wasn't for the inaccurate helmet. I think the face sculpt and the paint apps on the rest of the figure are amazing, absolutely incredible, but the problem is they gave him the wrong helmet. He should have a standard Phase 2 helmet with no attachments, but instead they give him the ARC Trooper helmet with the rangefinder, and it's just not accurate at all to what Jesse actually had with his ARC Trooper armor, so he definitely has a big dip on his ranking in this video because of that. At the 36th spot, we do have the Season 1 version of Omega. I think this figure is okay. I think the biggest problem is that she just has like the little like headpiece jewelry thing that she only wears for like one episode and then she takes it off and she never wears it again. And so it really makes it tough to have a Season 1 definitive version of this character because this version is pretty inaccurate when it comes to the rest of the season. At the 35 and 34 spot, I gave it to the Season 2 and Season 1 version of Wrecker. I did put the Season 2 version just a little bit lower though because I think I prefer the color scheme and the armor of the Season 1 version just a lot better. I think the gray with the like dark red accents looks a whole lot better than the like earthy mishmash of colors that we got with the Season 2 version. I think the Season 1 version is much better, and so it definitely gets a spot above the Season 2 version. At the 33 spot, we have the exact same issue with the Season 2 version of Echo, and that just comes down to I'm not a huge fan of the like browns and the oranges and like the dark earth tones, and it just looks all mishmashed and Mod Podge together to me. I do think that the uniformity, the Season 1 outfit looks much better. Coming in at the number 32 spot is the Season 2 version of Omega, and I think this is a much better figure. It also does come with a swappable head, which is super nice, as well as the like collapsed bow, so you can put it on her back and like not have her firing the bow all the time. So I think both these accessories are really cool, and it's a huge upgrade for this figure. At the number 31 spot, I gave it to Sev. I think that for the Commando figures, this one is a pretty solid figure, but I definitely think he's missing a lot of the extra add-ons and new molds that Sev would have needed to make this figure great. Overall, I think he's the worst of Delta Squad. At the 30 spot, I gave it to Fixer. Fixer is definitely a bigger upgrade because he does have some of the new molds like the helmet and the backpack that Fixer would have needed to be accurate, but he is missing a little bit of a paint deco on his chest, which is a little unfortunate, so still better than Sev, but not as good as some of the other Delta Squad members we have. At the 29th spot, I gave it to the plain white Commando. It's not a perfect figure, but I do think that compared to the other Commandos that we've already talked about in this list, he doesn't really have any major flaws like them, so he does get the number 29 spot. The number 28 spot I gave to Boss. Boss is one of my favorite members of Delta Squad, and of course I do think that the paint apps and the paint deco came out great on this figure, and of course again, really no big flaws that I can point out, so he is a great figure. At the 27th spot, we have the last of the Commandos, and he is by far the best, being Scorch. I think he's got the coolest paint deco with that gray and yellow color scheme. It turned out great, and of course the addition of the brand new mold for the like heavy launcher, as well as the backpack are great brand new additions for this figure. Coming in at the number 26 spot, I gave it to the original 332nd Trooper. After getting the updated 2023 version, I definitely see a lot more of the flaws in this figure, and so I think this one's a little bit lower than I normally rank him on the worst of first list, but I do think he still is a okay figure, but not as good as some of the other 2020 clones that'll be coming up here in a little bit. At the number 25 spot, I gave it to the 212th figure on the 2020 body. This figure is pretty okay. I do like the paint deco on it. I think the biggest problem is it doesn't have the black line. And for the most part, I'm a supporter of the like Clone Wars figures not having black lines. But in this case, I just think this figure would have benefited from it. I think it would have looked a lot cleaner and a lot better if it did have the black line. Coming in at the number 24 spot is the 13th Battalion Trooper, and this one is very similar to 212th, but I do like the design a little bit better, and I do think the black line does help a lot on the design for this one. Overall, I do like this one a lot. Next up, I give it to the Imperial Clone Shock Trooper. This one is another one I really like. I think the red pauldron is super dope and it looks cool for this figure. Or if you don't like the red pauldron, you can always just heat up the figure and pull off the pauldron, and then you'll just have a plain Shock Trooper, and I think that's really good as well. Doesn't have the black line, but honestly I give this one a pass for that because I think it looks really good without it. At the 22 and 21 spot, I give it to the two versions of Tech we have in the line. First up, I give it to the Season 1 version of Tech because I do really like the color scheme on this one, but the Season 2 version does have the removable helmet with the goggles, and I think the fact that you can keep the goggles on this version of the figure puts it above the Season 1 version, even though the color scheme is not as good in my opinion. Next up, the 20 and 19 spot, I gave it to the two versions of Hunter we have in the line. I do think the Season 2 version is by far the best looking figure of the Season 2 Bad Batch figures, but I do think I do like the color scheme of the gray and maroon of the Season 1 version a lot better, so I did give him the higher placement in this list. Coming in at the number 18 spot, I gave it to the Bad Batch version of Rex. For the most part, this figure is pretty solid because he's got some great articulation being on the Captain Rex body. The problem is, a lot of the paint apps are so lacking compared to the original version of Rex. Pretty much the entire back of the figure is missing paint, there's no paint at all, and a lot of the paint apps that the original Rex had, this one doesn't, so overall, it's just not the best figure. Coming in at the number 17 spot, I give it to Clone Pilot Hawk. This is a figure that I think is severely underrated. It is on the Captain Rex body, so the articulation is great, and it's the only clone pilot we've ever gotten in the line. I think the brand new head sculpt and like the little chest box for it is great, and it's something I hope we get more of. I'd love to see more pilots in the line. At the number 16 spot, we have the Camino Clone Trooper, and this is another one that I think is severely underrated. It is on the 2020 body, so articulation is pretty good, and I do love the paint apps for this figure. I absolutely love the design of the Camino clone, and it really comes off good on this figure. This is one of my favorites. At the 15th spot, I gave it to the Season 1 version of Crosshair. This one is one of my favorite designs of the Bad Batch characters. I really love the color scheme between the light gray, dark gray, and red. And then there's also hints of like brown in there for the belt and like the shoulder strap. It's a really cool design overall, and he's one of the better versions of the Bad Batch characters we've gotten. At the 14th spot, I gave it to the Gaming Greats 501st Jet Trooper. This is another one that I think is really underrated. It is on the Rex body, so again, great articulation, and this is just one of the coolest designs for a clone we've ever gotten, and so to see it in Black Series form, it's really cool, and it's one of my favorites. Coming in at the 13th spot, I gave it to Bad Batch Echo. This is the Season 1 version, and it is by far the best looking of all of the Bad Batch characters. I love the like dark gunmetal gray and red color scheme, as like I have with a lot of the Season 1 version of the Bad Batch, but Echo just does it really, really well. It's kind of like a mix of the already existing ARC Trooper armor that we've seen and his Bad Batch look, and they really merge it together well here, and I think it just comes off as the best looking Bad Batch armor. And of course, the Tamora Morrison head sculpt here is outstanding as well. Really, really love this figure. At the number 12 spot, I gave it to ARC Trooper 5s, and this one I really wanted to put higher up on the list because he's one of my favorite characters of all time, but the Black Series figure is definitely lacking in the accuracy category. For starters, the helmet decal is way, way too small. I don't know how they managed to make it so small, but it just looks really, really bad. And then one of these shoulder pauldrons should be black, and they just did it both gray, and I don't understand how they managed to get both of those wrong, but they just missed a lot of details on this figure that might not mean a lot to a lot of people, but to me it means the world, and so it's really disappointing to see this figure come so low on the list. At the 11th spot, I gave it to the Umbra Operative ARC Trooper. This is one of my favorite designs for all the ARC Troopers we've ever gotten. I think the black and yellow color scheme is super sharp, and of course that ARC Trooper mold is really good as well, so I don't think I have any complaints with this guy, other than the fact I wish he had a removable helmet, but other than that, he's a really solid figure. Finally, breaking the top 10, I gave it to the HasCon exclusive Rex. I think this is one of the best Black Series figures ever made. I do absolutely love the exclusive packaging for this guy. The biggest problem is that he doesn't have the photoreal underneath the helmet, and he's the only Black Series clone ever to not have photoreal, and so that one is definitely a big hit on this guy compared to the other single release of Rex, which we'll get into in a little bit. At the number 9 spot, I gave it to ARC Trooper Echo. This is easily the best ARC Trooper we've ever gotten in the line. I think the deco and the exclusive throwback Clone Wars packaging is amazing, and I also think the Tamora Morrison head sculpt is fantastic on this guy as well. I really wish that ARC Trooper 5s lived up to how good this ARC Trooper Echo figure really is. At the number 8 spot, I gave it to the Phase 1 Clone Trooper on the 2023 clone body. This figure is such a big improvement over just the 2020 version. He does have a removable helmet with an amazing Tamora Morrison face sculpt underneath. And of course, the articulation and sculpting is much better with the brand new chest, shoulder pads, as well as the knee pads that are no longer glued to the thighs. It's such a huge improvement compared to the 2020 version. At the number 7 spot, I gave it to the Phase 1 501st Trooper. This one's also on the 2023 clone body, so the articulation is great, and it's just like the Phase 1 Trooper we just talked about, but it does have some blue paint apps, and I think those blue paint apps look really dang good. We hadn't gotten a Phase 1 501st yet in the line, and so this was a great addition to the line, and it looks really, really good on that new clone body. At the number 6 spot, I gave it to the Phase 2 single release. This guy is an amazing figure, again on that 23 clone body, so great articulation. Biggest problem is that with the removable helmet, he has this like 5 o'clock shadow that just looks really, really bad. I do love the Tamora Morrison face sculpt, but that 5 o'clock shadow really ruins the removable helmet for this guy. which is why at the number 5 spot I gave it to the Clone Android 2-pack version of this clone, because he's got a few additional paint apps, as well as he does not have the 5 o'clock shadow, so really big improvement when it comes to that. And other than that, it's the exact same figure, but just better paint apps and no 5 o'clock shadow. At the number 4 spot, I gave it to the 2-pack release of the 332nd Trooper. This is one of my favorite figures of 2024. The articulation is so much better than the original version, as well as the paint apps too. The paint apps are just night and day, and the newer version is so much better. So this one is definitely easily a top 5 figure for me, and it's one of my favorite releases of the year. At the number 3 spot, I give it to Commander Oppo, and this might be one of the most controversial picks of this whole video, but I absolutely love this figure. I know a lot of people don't. It's either you love it or you hate it, and I really love it. I do think that the 2023 body, like I said, is such a huge upgrade, and I really like the choice of the Kenobi blue for this. It's definitely not your typical 501st blue. It's a little bit different, but it is accurate to what we saw in the Kenobi show, and that's what I really like about it. It's a little bit different than what we normally get, but it's still accurate to the media that it's from, and it doesn't try to change the color of that, and so I do like that it actually tries to be accurate to the Kenobi show, and I really like that. The number 2 spot has to go to Clone Commander Bly. He is on the Rex body, which I do think is worse than the 2023 clone body, but it makes up for it in the paint apps, because the paint apps and the weathering are spot on this figure. This figure released in 2020, and it was the last, like, really good painted figure that we've gotten, because ever since then, they kind of switched to not really doing weathering, and it's the last time we ever got that on the Black Series Clone Trooper, and it's something that I think turned out great, and it's one of the best Black Series figures ever made, with the combination of the pretty solid articulation of the Rex body and the amazing paint apps. It's definitely an underrated figure. The number 1 spot has to go to the standard release of the Black Series Captain Rex. This figure is one of the best Black Series figures ever made. It's got this really high quality feeling plastic to it. The weathering and the paint apps are absolutely amazing. The articulation is really solid, and of course it does have that amazing Tamora Morrison face sculpt underneath, one of the best face sculpts we've ever gotten for a clone trooper. And so overall, the combination between all those together is what really made me put it at number 1. I wanted to put one of the 2023 clones above it, but it just doesn't have the weathering that this Rex has, and so I had to put Rex at number 1. We might see a figure dethrone it next year, but as of right now, Rex still keeps the number 1 spot. But there you have it. That is my Black Series worst to first Clone Troopers list. Definitely a controversial list, so let me know what you guys think down below if you agree with my list or if you change some of the placings, but that is going to do it for this video, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.